Hello, everyone. I'm going to be looking away from the camera a little bit. I'm going to be reading a script that I have right here, which sounds terrible. I know. I usually don't do that on my channel. However, this is really interesting because we have a brand new thing coming on here. So, welcome back to RVdreamz, where we celebrate the road less traveled and the people bold enough to walk it, sometimes literally. So, today we have a guest that is a true kindred spirit of the nomadic world. And I met Ian Bailey back in 2024, the end of December 2024 in Calgary here, and where the two van lifers crossed paths and instantly bonded over stories and touring and sunsets and dreams of adventure. Now, since then, Ian's lived a life that reads like an epic travel novel. It really does. And what he's doing now is he's toured North America in a van. He's currently trekking over 4,000 kilometers, 2,500, 3,000 miles. I mean, it's amazing. He's doing this across the Australian outback on foot. So that's amazing right there. Now, he's done all kinds of things. He's done some wonderful things, and this is more than just a chat. This is a deep dive into the mind of a modern explorer, writer, and wanderer. Let's find out what drives him and what keeps him doing more. And, he's even written books. It's amazing. All the things he's done are absolutely amazing. Let's find out what else he does. So how about you introduce yourself and you give us a snapshot of who you are and what One Aussie Adventure represents?
Well, hey, I'm Ian Bailey, One Aussies Adventure. What does it represent? Uh, what not to do? That's my favorite slogan, what not to do. And so don't look at what I do and assume it's the right way to go because it's probably not. Um, no, for me, it was something that you actually said in your email the other day, Rob, was the like reinventing myself. And I do have this kind of um, constant need for the next thing, a bit like an adrenaline junkie, right? So, like when someone they keep like raising the risk levels higher and higher as they become more accustomed to that risk. And so for me, it's the same thing. So, going into different traveling mediums, whether it be van life or the hiking or whatever, it's just raising the risk, right? And so every time I do something new, it freaks people out because by the time they just get used to me being in the little box that they've put me in, I go and change it. So I like the fact that I keep people guessing, right? Because at the end of the day, it's my life. I'm the lead character in that movie, and everyone else is just observing. If they don't like it, they can just get out of the cinema.
Exactly. It's wonderful. I love that philosophy. So we first met back in the at the end of 2024. Do you remember what drew you to Calgary and what your mindset was at that time?
Well, I had the advantage of going to Canada before that in February for a month. I went to Vancouver Island for almost a month, and I'd been following Matthew at Van Life Plus, and so I organised a time to go see him. But we met midway. I don't know where we were. It was some rest stop somewhere between Calgary and Vancouver. He was going to see his parents. And so I thought it'd be good when I came back to do my North America road trip. If I started in Calgary and not Vancouver, that meant that I didn't have to go across Rogers Pass again in unfamiliar territory. And then so I started in Calgary because it was a city I could fly to. It was very easy, and because it was big enough, I could buy big fella there. And yeah, so that's why I started with Calgary more than anything. It just happened to be that Matthew was there. We I think we caught up once or twice before I took off on my road trip. But I was keen to get across Canada. So yeah, it was just a reference starting point. No other particular reason.
Yeah. And Big Fella was the big bus that you had. Well, I say big bus. It was a bus anyway, maybe a small bus, but it was a bus. So what was
Yeah.
it that drew you to the lifestyle, the nomadic living? What drew you to that in the first place?
Uh, well, the pandemic, really. So back in Australia, where I am now, I had a bookshop and I was renting a two-bedroom house nearby, and um, I was paying like I think $500 a week or something like that for this two-bedroom. But I was in the bookshop for almost 20 hours a day. And so I simply went back there to pass out, only to turn around and come back again. Like I even ate my meals at the bookshop. I didn't even cook at the house. So it was just a glorified room. And there was someone else, a young family, who their landlord hiked up the rent because they could. And so I actually offered them my place that I was renting. They could take over my lease because my landlord was locked into that lower price for the remainder of that term. And I had a Volkswagen transporter van for the bookshop, and so I just moved into that. And so I just figured, well, if I need a bed, that's all it is. I just parked out the back where the bookshop was and started van lifing. And I got even lazier. Like I just sometimes like I got to the point where I just got like a trolley bed, like those fold up beds.
Yep.
And I left it in the back of the bookshop. And half the time I'd be there at midnight and I just pull that out and sleep in the back of the bookshop and then wake up and go again the next day. I didn't even bother going to the car park at the back of the shop and going into the van. And it wasn't until I sold the bookshop that I actually started traveling in the van because I was already there. I was like, well, why not do this all the time? So that actually, it just timing was good. There was other personal things going on as well, but generally speaking, that's what got me into the van at the time was the necessity of COVID with a young family who needed an actual house, and they were. I don't think they were living rough, but I think they were couch surfing, and I think it was like mum and three kids or something trying to couch surf during COVID. So it was just untenable for them. So yeah, I just didn't see any point having a sticks and bricks for me when I was never there. So anyway.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that you had a bookshop, but now
Mm.
you were in Canada, then you went to the US, you came back to Canada. So, what are some of the highlights of your travels across North America?
Oh, I got some funny stories. So the whole idea was to drive across Canada, go down to New York, and then drive through America back to Calgary. That was the original big loop that I had actually carved out for myself, or one of a couple different options, but that's the one I obviously did. Uh, some of the highlights are funny. Like I remember um, everyone says like everything in Australia is trying to kill you, right? And in some ways, like you could argue that's a valid thing because they're deadly, right? But only if you piss them off, right? If you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone, right? But we don't have bears and we don't have cougars and we don't have any other wild cats like bobcats and things. And so I was totally unaware of how to be bear aware, right? Other than theoretical, like practically, how do you be bear aware when you've never experienced bears in the wild? And so, me being just the guy who just goes and does shit, I went on this hike and it just blew my mind that um, I was putting myself in a position where bears were still active. And I just totally didn't realize that I was. And so I thought, okay, I need to become more bear aware, right? Even though in February when I went last time, I had some pretty gnarly experiences and I still didn't learn my lessons from that first time in Vancouver Island, which is what allegedly got more bears than anywhere else, right? And so um, I decided I went as far north as I possibly could go and then go across Canada as high as I could go. So to give you an idea of when I got to about I think it's the middle of Canada, it took me 3 hours to drive down to Winnipeg. So it was actually, I was constantly up high. And the reason why is I want to stay away from highways, but I wanted to see all the wildlife, right? I wanted to see bears in the wild as I'm driving by, or moose or elk or raccoons or anything. And I never saw a single moose. I never saw, I think, I can't remember how many kilometers I did, something like 10,000, 12,000 kilometers. Didn't see a single moose, didn't see a raccoon. I didn't see a deer. I didn't see an elk. I didn't see anything except squirrels galore. one fox, and I think a couple of birds. That's basically it. So I call BS on Canada having any moose because I didn't see any. It's like Scotland and it's unicorns all over again, right? And so when I got to America, I had some goals I had to be in Manhattan for, and so I went down there. I then flew to England for a week, caught up with a friend in England, and then when I came back, I then drove down to Washington, and I totally unaware ended up in Washington, D.C. on election night. And it was just batshit crazy bedlam, right?
Can
And
imagine.
so
Yeah.
I did, yeah, I didn't have the best of times while I was in America. So I just hightailed it across the country and got back to Canada as quick as I could. I almost just went straight north and just go straight up to Toronto and then go back through Canada. But
Yeah.
the winter was starting and I didn't want to go through Canada during the snow season. So yeah, anyway, that was that trip kind of in a whirlwind.
Yeah, definitely. So here's an interesting question. How did the community, the van life community, the nomads that we have around us, and the friendships that you've made on the road, like our friendship actually, and how did that all of that influence your journey?
Um, it doesn't really influence the journey. Um, only by the fact that if it would is if it just happened to be that the two of us got to be at the same place at the same time, I might deviate to meet up with someone. Other than that, I'm just a roll with the punches. Like I have, besides actually going to Manhattan for a particular date because I had a flight to catch at a JFK, I didn't care how long it took me to get there. I didn't care how long it took me to get back. I woke up every day not even knowing how far I was going to drive or what I was going to see that day. And so for me, meeting people on the road is interesting, but it's not necessarily my driving. I have to meet this person, this person, this person. I did have an interesting time. I don't know where it was. I think I was driving. I'm getting the states mixed up. It was from one state to another. I think I was going into Nebraska, and just before I got to the border, I get a message on Facebook Messenger, and it was a lady that saw the bus because Big Fella had all this logos all over it, right? So you couldn't miss it. And she sent me a message and say, "Hey, listen, we've seen you on the road. Can we have a chat? We've got a favor to ask of you." And I was like, that seems really weird. Okay. So I organized a meetup the next day. I think it was at Hungry Jack's or Walmart or some car park, something public, because I didn't know who this person was. And she sheepishly says that her deceased husband had always wanted to go to Australia, right? And I'm like, all right, well, what's going on? And she said, "Can you take his remains back to Australia and scatter them for us in Australia?" And I was like, "I'm a total stranger. Like, why are you asking me to take your husband's remains and scatter them?" And I thought, I'm going to do this, right? And I said, "You realize that I'm Australian?" She goes, "Well, that's the point because, I want you to go back to Australia with his remains." I said, "No, no. Between now and when I go back to Australia, right, Lloyd and I, we're going to have a lot of fun on the way." And so she agreed. So she gave me his remains, right? And so I'd go places like, I think I went out the front of the filming of, is it Yellowstone down in Montana? And so I put him on the front gates of Yellowstone Ranch and actually took a photograph and sent it to the family. I took a photograph at Banff National Park, and there was one where I think it was a bison in the background walking towards it. So I took a picture of the remains of the bison walking towards it, and just kept feeding the family with all these action photos of Lloyd getting out and about and doing stuff. And that was kind of cool because that kind of then drove that part of the journey because I was trying to find cool and interesting things for Lloyd to do, even though the guy's been dead for probably 5 years. But
Yeah,
it was more so how I
that's
could
definitely
actually
different. Yeah.
be creative with that. And it was kind of good fun. But I've kept all those private for the family. So I haven't actually really posted any of those things because I wanted that to be something for the family. And when I did get back to Australia, I did scatter his remains in a really cool spot on, it's called the Sunshine Coast of Australia. It's like almost permanently green. It's lush. It's all a dairy farm kind of area. But what I didn't tell the family until after I did the whole scatter of Lloyd into this beautiful vista that overlooked this amazing view was that it was a magic mushroom crop was right there. And so I scattered him over the magic mushrooms.
There you go.
So hopefully Lloyd's having a good time in the afterlife.
Yeah,
So that's the
without
only
a
time I've really
doubt.
been driven by that.
He's got to
Anyway,
be having a great time. That's an amazing adventure story right there. I love that.
it
You
was good
know,
fun because traveling on your own, you have to be kind of creative in what you're doing, and I just saw the opportunity there and thought, this could be a lot of good fun, So it was.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's one of my philosophies is that life is an adventure. Go live it. And a lot of people
Mm,
don't until after the fact, like Lloyd did. And
yeah,
enjoyed
yeah.
it
Well,
after the fact.
they said to me that Lloyd traveled more in that 3 months than he had his entire life.
There you go. That's awesome. I love that story. That's fantastic. So,
Anyway,
so after your North American tour, you took a leap, went to England for job opportunity. Can you tell us about that, the transition, not necessarily about the job, but going from the US and Canada and then over to England?
well, I'm kind of grateful that I did that week in England because I hired a camper van when I was there and drove around and got a bit of an idea of what the English roads were like. They drive on the same side as Australia, all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty easy. But getting used to miles per hour was a bit tricky. At least in North America, the cars have the dual speed, so when it's kilometers and miles. But in
Yep.
England, it's just miles per hour. So I was trying to have to figure things out. That was interesting. But when I went over there, it was because I was going to relocate to England.
Mhm.
And yeah, I had a job offer. And unfortunately, it wasn't until I got there that the UK government didn't approve the work visa because the company should have hired someone local. And so they flipped my visa to a tourist visa, which meant I had to be out in 3 months or whatever it was, right? And so I just basically just spent 3 months traveling around, went up to the top of Scotland, went to all these amazing castles and things like that. And I went into a pub that's 700 years old, continuous pub, which blew my mind. And there was other places I went into where it was like, do you remember the Da Vinci Code?
Yes.
Yeah, so the chapel that's in there that they go find the actual secrets at the end,
Mhm.
Langdon goes to, that's called the Roslin Chapel, which is near Edinburgh in Scotland. And so I went there and actually, got to explore that chapel, and it's quite ornate and beautiful when you're in person, but it's quite small too, so it's a chapel, it's not a full church. And so I was really surprised at how small that thing was. Yeah, and then going to the very top of Scotland was amazing. But on the way, this is how I travel. Like I said, I don't plan my path. I just go, okay, well, I want to get to this point. Whatever happens in the middle is great. And it just happened to be I was driving along and go, okay, where am I going to park up for the night? And I looked on the map, and the road I was on was literally going to be following the entire length of Loch Ness. And it was like, oh my God, I have to camp at Loch Ness. And so I found a place that literally was maybe 50 meters from the water of Loch Ness. Just this pull out on the side of the road. I opened the van doors and there's Loch Ness. I didn't see the monster, but it was so cool to actually be in such an iconic place for free, like
Mhm.
nobody cared. And Scotland has laws that protect roaming. So they can't tell you you can't sleep there. So there's no parking, no stopping, no nothing in Scotland. If you want to stop and check it out, you just stop and check it out. Block the road or what, doesn't matter. Who cares? People go around you. So that was a real culture shock
Yeah,
in
that's
Scotland.
fantastic.
Whereas like in North America, they'd probably tow you away by the time you got back to your car, you know.
That's really interesting. So, tying in with that, you've actually written three books now. So,
Yeah.
what is it that inspires your writing? And I venture to think that some of your travel are actually inspiring some of your writing.
Not so much my travel, but the freedom that travel gave me to write unencumbered, like without having to go to a job and be distracted. Because when you're trying to write, you have to really get in the zone, right? You have to get in the alpha brainwaves and actually get into the zone. That's that really efficient mode that your brain goes into and creative and things like that. And if you've got a job to do, that depletes all of your creativity. So when you get home, you've got to try and write. You're just not going to have much fun, right? And by the
Yeah.
time you get in that zone, it's probably time to go to bed. So it gave me the freedom to be able to get in that zone and stay in that zone for like 8 hours during the middle of the day and not have to worry about being somewhere or having a job to worry about. And I was still doing some work. Like I edited a book for a publisher while I was there. I did other things while I was there, which was good fun. And that was a really big learning curve. But and doing the pagination of the book and things, and that'll be coming out, I don't know, a couple of months. Um, and so that'd be cool to keep doing that as a full-time job, but it's so sporadic work, I couldn't rely on it. So anyway, it gave me the chance to write these books, but my stories aren't necessarily travel. So it was just gave me the freedom to write. And the whole reason of getting into writing started when I had the bookshop. Like I remember people would come in all chipper because they've written a book and probably self-published, and they'd ask me to put the book in the bookshop. But I was a secondhand and rare bookshop, so I didn't really have much interest in selling new books because it wasn't my market. But I'd take them on because being a local author, you want to support the local authors. So I'd have their books in the shop and have a little section for new authors. And I'd inevitably ask them all, what's your goal? What do you want to achieve by writing
Mm.
this book? Right. And every one of them so mundanely said that they'd love to win a Pulitzer Prize or a Man Booker Prize or something audacious, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking without fail. Didn't matter if it was a poetry book or whether it was a science fiction. They all said the same thing. They wanted grandeur. And I said, man, if I ever wrote a book, I couldn't care less about winning some major prize like that. If I ever want to write a book, I want to go on the Pope's do not read list. And they'd be looking at me like, why would you want to get on the Pope's do not read list? And which is called the Index. And I said, well, because then 1 billion Catholics are going to want to know why and buy the book, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. There you
so
go.
I'm thinking like at a marketing point of view, right? I'd much rather have 1 billion people buy my book than, for example, the New York Times bestsellers list only requires you to sell 5,000 copies in a week, which is nothing, right? So it's to get on that list. I mean, it's a lot. Don't get me wrong, but you would think it's more like 1 million books, right? But it's only 5,000 copies. So yeah, so I wrote my first book on the basis that I wanted to get on the Pope's do not read list. And I think it achieved it because it's certainly not on his approved reading list, but it's really throwing the church under the bus. It was very much a personal tryst about all the grief and anxiety I have about the Catholic Church, and just threw it right at them. And there was another customer of mine, and she made a comment. Actually, it was about Stephen King, who's one of my favorite authors. And she said she hates how Stephen King and other authors write an unnecessary sex scene into a book, right? It's like,
Mhm.
for example, in It, right, with Pennywise, they all have an orgy at the end. Like, it's totally unrelated to the story, right? In other stories he's done, like there's one where I think it was called the Raft. I think it was called. Um, yeah, I think it's called the Raft. And they're dying on the raft, and so they decide to bonk each other. It's like, so it's just an unnecessary to the story, right?
Yeah.
And so just to piss her off, the entire chapter 3 of my first book is X-rated porn just for her. And when I sent it to her, I said, I wrote chapter 3 with you in mind. Now she's like an 85-year-old woman. So it sounded funny saying that, but she knew what I meant because of the comments she constantly made about the sex scenes. So in my book, chapter 3 is a totally unnecessary chapter. But it is complete porn. So, so I write just to piss people off, basically. That's the whole what I try and do when I write.
Well, there you go. You've definitely managed to do that. I've seen some of your writing. It's good. Now, here's just to change the script a little bit. When most people are done traveling, they come back to their home country and they settle down and they just relax a little bit. You did the opposite. You went out on a
Well,
4,000 kilometer walkabout, the Australian outback. So
that
what in the
was
world would have inspired you to do that?
Clearly, you haven't watched my videos. No, that was actually out of necessity. So I don't want to go into the nitty gritties of it because it might trigger some people. Um, but my travels was originally inspired because I intended to end it all, and so I wanted to live like a king until I couldn't. Right,
Yep.
and that was the goal. So I drained my bank accounts and just went out and helped as many people as it could. Like you mentioned, like for example, with Big Fella and how like I gave that to Matthew. Matthew would have only been about one of 10 or 11 people that I did similar things for, maybe not with the bus, but certainly the value wise. Um, like I'm not trying to toot my horn or anything, but the whole point was I wanted to go out giving as much as I could to everyone who needed like practical assistance, not just a almost patronizing pat on the back saying, there, you'll get there. I wanted to actually give some practical, that saying, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man a fish, he'll eat for a lifetime.
Yes.
That's great. But the poor guy's starving, right? So you need to give him the fish first and then teach him the fish, right? I think just to
Yeah.
simply teach the fish is actually a cruel thing because the guy's starving while he's trying to actually catch a fish at the same time. And it's going to cloud judgment. It's going to change paths. So I believe in helping people practically and then giving them the tools to do stuff, right? So, like for example, there was a guy I used to work with here in Australia, and his wife had some strange brain disease kick in, and where she literally, I think it's almost like a stroke, but when she came to, she had zero memory. She had amnesia. She couldn't remember her husband, her children, and she's only in her late 20s, right? And
Mm.
so it was. So he was trying to maintain a whole household and a woman at home who doesn't understand that she's actually married to him and trying to work and all this kind of stuff. So, like, I helped him so he could actually take time off work to help her, right?
Hmm.
So, there's many things I've done similar to that. And so, I wanted to go out anyway with that in mind. But when I went to England for that week, I got given the opportunity for work. And so that's why I decided to go back to England. And I figured, well, maybe this is an 11th hour thing, right? That um, maybe there's a reason. I've got a mission still to accomplish.
Hmm.
And so I sold my camper van in Australia and went to England. But then when the job wasn't able to go ahead, my bank account just depleted twice as quick because the Australian currency is half that of the pound. And so um, if I took 20 grand over, I only had 10,000 pounds. And so it went fast. And so when I came back to Australia, so this is getting to your question about why did I come back and just start walking? Literally, when I arrived back to Australia, I had no money, no house, I was homeless. All I had was what was in my backpack, and that is it. That's
That's
it.
that's a very interesting thing because it leads into so many other things, like what your philosophies are and why. So like
Well,
you're in a
you give
constant
that.
state of reinvention, which is honestly it's awesome.
Is it constant day reinvention really, or is it that I'm so used to um, rolling with the punches? I don't care what comes. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't have my identity in a thing. Like I'm not a van lifer. I'm an adventurer. And the tool, whether it be my legs, a van, a bus, um, sleeping in the back of my bookshop, it's all the same to me,
Right.
right? It's just adventure, right? And the challenge and overcoming that challenge, that's what excites me. Now, how I do that, whether it be a van or whatever, is secondary to me, right? And so people will say I'm a van lifer, or I'm a boat lifer, or I'm a an RVer. That's to me, that's boxing them into that little spot, right? Or a prepper, or a homesteader. They're all the same, with the ERs at the end, right? So it's all whatever you want to call it with like a homesteader, right? Van lifer. It's all the same thing. So for me, my choice was: do I go on the streets of Melbourne where I landed
Hmm.
and just be homeless and then just fall between the cracks and just disappear, or do I do something productive? Do I do something to prove that I'm not going to go out on circumstances timeline? I'm going out on my own timeline, and I didn't want to go out that way. And so, literally, like I formulated my final plans of this trip in Melbourne Airport after I arrived back in Australia. I had an idea what I was going to do, but I didn't know until I got off the airplane where I was going to start my walk from. I had no tent, I had no sleeping bag, I had no means of getting them either. I had to use a credit card I couldn't afford to pay to get the basic things. Um, it was a real stress, right? I didn't eat for the first week. So it was because I just didn't have the money for food, because I literally wiped my accounts out with that intention. And so, but I was resilient. I just refused to stop. And so I kept walking. So I've literally just passed the 500-kilometer walking mark. And so I've still got another 3,900 kilometers to go or something like that. But, like I'm heading off tomorrow, and I think it's 125 kilometers to the next town, so I've had to prepare for that. And my preparation is the day before. That's it. And I try and keep things simple. So like my diet is super simple. um and my determination is just rock solid. I refuse to stop despite the fact that I've damaged my right foot probably irreparably, or at least in the medium term, right? So
Hmm.
almost to the point where when I saw a doctor, besides what I've already done, we've discussed skin grafts. That's how serious the damage is to that foot. And he's saying, you've got to rest and put your feet up and not walk so much. How? How can I stop and rest and put my feet up? Like, it just doesn't exist, right? And so I've just had
Yeah.
to power through. And so my right foot is badly, badly damaged. My left shoulder, I've pinched a nerve or something. It's now really badly damaged, so I can't walk as far without putting the backpack down. So I've just been making that backpack lighter and lighter and lighter. And so again, it's just there's a challenge. How do I solve that problem and move on? Or I could collapse under it. They're the two choices I've got. And yeah, I don't buckle to like, if something happens to me like that, I'm not going to sit there and just go in a fetal position and cry. It's like, all right, what do I do to fix this? What do I do to get out of this? What's my next step? What are my steps? Do I have any steps? you know?
Yeah.
And when I had no steps, I just took steps, literally. So I just started walking, and that's how it all started. So,
That's
yeah.
absolutely fantastic. Okay, so I've got two following questions that we're going to end the video on here because we're running out of time. But what is the one thing that you carry with you, metaphorical, physical, whatever it is? What's the one thing that you carry with you on every adventure?
Mindset.
Okay, can you just a little bit talk about mindset?
Well, just like I was saying, right? The mindset could have been collapse under the weight or be proactive, right? There's always two sides to a coin. They might not look pretty. They both could be covered in shit, but at the same time, there's always a dichotomy. There's always a choice to be made, right? And I don't believe there's anything such thing as a wrong choice, right? I think that every choice is an experience, and sometimes they can be painful experience, and sometimes it can be a joyful experience. But you don't know until you give it, like, till you do it. And so for me, it's that mindset, right? Yes, like I'm looking down the barrel of nearly 4,000 kilometers to go, and that can really depress somebody, thinking, "Oh my God, that's so far," right? Which it is.
It
That's really
is, yeah.
far. That's the entire vertical height of the United States as well, right? So it's a long way. But I'm also of the belief that if I don't take that one step in the morning when I take off tomorrow, I'll never get there. So I just keep going, and I give myself a goal, 20 kilometers a day minimum. And if I don't get to that 20, I just keep going until I get there, even if it's after dark. So for me, it's that mindset of choosing to reframe whatever I'm facing to what I think at the time is the best decision I can make. Sometimes it's the wrong one, sometimes it's not an ideal one, but I own that decision either way. So that's what I mean by the mindset.
That's fabulous. So, where can people follow you and your journey? And it's not just this journey, but every consequent journey. Where can they follow you? And then where can they come find the content that's in your book? Where can they find your book?
So, well, on Amazon, Amazon's a funny little thing because, like, if I give you a link to Amazon.com and you're in Canada, it will say it's not available to you. You've got to look at your own country and actually search Dark Matter by Ian Bailey, and you'll see it in your own Amazon version, right? That's the best way to support what I'm doing because you're getting a book out of it. I think it's a decent book, and I get a little bit of royalties from that. And so it's like a win-win, right? As far as following along the journey, well, One Aussie's Adventure is the handle for every social media platform, whether it be YouTube, which I upload at the moment pretty much every second day. I try and keep it under 20 minutes each time. Instagram, Facebook, the usual suspects. And for the second two books that I've written, which is Moloch and 86,400, those are only available on Patreon at the moment, but that's not under One Aussie's Adventure. That's under my author name. So it's patreon.com/Ian Bailey, and which is Bayly. And you get to read. So Moloch is complete on there. You can read the whole story. And every Monday, a new chapter is released on Patreon for 86,400, which is the third book in the series. And so people are getting to read that in real time. And I encourage every one of them on the Patreon page that's on there to give me feedback and say, hey, listen, have you thought about this idea? Or where you go here, what if you expand down there? I want it to be a collaborative thing. And if you keep it between you and me, whoever's listening, is that in the physical copy of the book of both Moloch and 86,400, my Patreon members are going to be mentioned as a thank you. But some of them are actually they're named characters, and so they're actually because they're the support they've provided. I'm actually naming them in the book. So in Moloch, for example, which is a real horror, one of my supporters, the entire chapter is named after her, and she's named about 10 times in that chapter, for example, as a way of saying thank you, right, for the support. And there's half a dozen or something people like that in that category where they're named people. But to give you an idea of how dark Moloch is as a horror, she was saying she had to put the book down because it was so anxiety inducing she couldn't continue. And I said to her, look, I understand, like, you got to do that, but the whole point was that I wanted the reader to feel the same anxiety that the protagonist feels. That they don't get a break from it, so why should you?
There you
Right?
go. I
That
love that. That is
so,
great.
so if you're going through hell, then why should the reader get a free pass and some breathing space? No, it is constant anxiety induced for the entire book. And she said, well, that it certainly achieved that goal, right? So I was really happy with that.
Yeah. So where can people follow you, follow your journey, and get your books and see what other books you're coming up with?
Well, following the journey, One Aussie's Adventure is the handle for all the social media things, whether it be YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all that stuff. And for the book, the published one, Dark Matter, you go to Amazon, search Dark Matter by Ian Bailey in whatever Amazon country account you have, and it should be there. It's available to almost every country. And for the following two books, they're only available on Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/Ian Bailey, you can actually read Moloch in full. And every Monday, a new chapter of 86,400 is still coming out. And I really want people to be engaged and actually write comments and feedback because I want it to be a collaborative thing between my Patreon supporters and myself. And so some Patreon supporters are being named because of the tier that they're on. So they're a character in the book. They all get killed off or something like that. So it's been fun that
That's
way.
what you get for being a Patreon supporter. You get killed off in the book.
you get killed off. Yeah, it's Game of Thrones or the Song of Ice and Fire for sycophants. And so but yeah, the last one is about death. So the trigger warning will be if you're not wanting to discuss death, or you've got raw emotions around death, probably a tough one to swallow. A good example of there's a chapter where um, they're having to reap. I think it's a 7-year-old girl who's died of leukemia,
Hmm.
and the injustice that is felt in that. And then the very next person they have to reap is a serial killer of 57 victims, and they have to treat him exactly the same. And so the emotional roller coaster as a reader, it's like that injustice. Like, why should that person be treated the same as that poor little girl, right? And going through that kind of philosophical approach about it's not up to us to judge what like someone's actions are. It's simply just a function. The Grim Reaper is escorting souls from one plane to the next and has no judgment. But some of the deaths, you've read some of them, Rob, like they're in war scenes, and I've had to speed time in different things. So in the one scene, I think I've got 3 different timelines running at the same time, and things like that. And later on, there's sections where 3 people are talking at the same time, but I've got to get the reader to understand it's 3 different people, but talking as one. And things like that. So it's been very challenging. So I want people to engage on Patreon and give feedback on that. So that's how they can follow through and stay connected that way. And it helps continue my hike, my walk, if you will. It's the best way to support the what I'm doing on my channel.
Yeah, that sounds fine. I'm gonna have links down below for everything, so we can make sure that people follow you. The biggest thing that I want to ask, and I'm not going to ruin it, so I'm not actually asking, but I'm wondering, like I'm sure everyone else that's watching this is going to be wondering, what's next? And that's the secret for
Yeah,
yet
what's
another interview. They'll have to follow your channel and they'll find out that way.
I already have the what next is in motion. And I have been dropping Easter eggs in my videos. If anyone pays attention to something I say, even though I tend to waffle on a lot, everything I do say has a purpose. Like I actually say something specifically for a reason. Um, and if they look at the videos of me walking along 90 Mile Beach, they'll actually see a little Easter egg. And the funny thing is, Rob, like you know what's coming next because you've had an inside conversation with me. But
Yeah.
when I videoed that particular scene, which is in a video from a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago or something, I didn't even know about what was coming next. And I'm actually predicting what's coming next in that particular scene. And it was quite cool when I was editing the video going, wow, like I put that in motion without realizing what I was doing. And within about 3 days, I think, of actually that 3 or 4 days of making that video, the dominoes started coming in together, and it's actually opened up doors that I never thought was possible. I thought it was completely in the realms of impossibility, and so I can't wait to get to the point of sharing that steps with people, but they're going to have to follow along to have that slow reveal because I want to make sure it's solid before I actually announce it, right? So that's
There you go.
essentially where I'm at with it.
I
But
love it. I
yeah,
was
so I'm
actually
excited
watching one
about
of
it.
your
I'm
videos
really excited
today.
about the next one. What's
Yeah,
that?
I was watching one of your videos today, and what I got a kick out of is you said something in there. It was like my ears really perked up. I was like, "Is he doing that intentionally?" I'm not sure. And then I kept watching the video, and you never touched back on it. I was like, "Yeah, if I didn't know better, I wouldn't have caught that." But because I knew better,
Exactly.
I caught it, and like I was thinking, I wonder if
Well, yeah, so that's an Easter egg where I drop it in, hoping someone picks up the actual clues and finds the egg. In my writing, it's the same thing. For example, in the book Dark Matter, it's literally about black dark matter, but all the women, all their names mean light. So I intentionally put um, little Easter eggs in everything I write about them. The same thing with Moloch. People might not realize Moloch has a parallel universe to an actual person who's still alive today, but I never named them in the entire book. They're never named. But if you know them, you go, "Oh, I know who that is," right? Little Easter eggs,
That's where
and
it adds to the
and
fun.
then it adds to the fun. And so, and 86,400 is the same thing. I had to put little Easter eggs in there that I think are funny. And only those who really want to go look and find it are going to find those little Easter eggs. So in my One Aussie's Adventure videos for YouTube, I intentionally drop little Easter eggs and then never go back to it, and like leaving little crumbs for people to actually pick up as they go along. And I find that quite fun, doing that. So it's yeah, it's quite, when I pick out the camera up, it's very intentional what I'm actually trying to say and do. Um, yeah, so that's how I like it. I think it's good fun.
It is fun, and that's the point, and it brings people back to your channel that much more. And it's just it's
As
exciting.
long as they're picking up what I'm putting down.
Yes, this has been a lot of
Otherwise, it's
fun. I
all,
really appreciate that.
that's all good, man. I think it's nearly midnight where you are, so it's probably you probably got to get going.
It's a minute to midnight. I'm exhausted, but like I said, this has been fun. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah, good
point.
stuff. Yeah, but other than that, yeah, thanks for having us on. I look forward to seeing it when it comes out, and realizing I've had a booger in my nose the whole time or something. But
Absolutely, you should have seen it. It was just it's massive. It was just terrible.
yeah, just hanging down.
Yeah, just dripping down. Like it'll be terrible.
Yeah, that's why we grow a beard, see, so it hides it.
That's exactly why you grow a beard. That's exactly why.
Yeah.
It hides everything just nicely.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, cool bananas. All right, well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, and I guess we'll see how things progress from here, and stay tuned for the next couple of videos. They're going to be um I think quite interesting. I'm going to start dropping a few more hints as I go along.
There you go. I look forward to seeing them. I really do. Every time you
Yeah.
drop a video, I'm watching it. It's like I can't wait to see the next one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I need to get my watch hours up. I think I'm only at like 760 watch hours, and I need 4,000 to get monetized. So
Yeah.
it's a motivator to actually do more videos, because the more videos you do, the more people are going to watch and go from there. But really, like if people could comment on the videos, that's the best thing, because that actually tells the algorithm that people are engaging in the video. And so yeah, so hopefully it's entertaining enough for people to want to come back.
There you go. All right. It's been fantastic. Love it. And we will talk again shortly.
All right, man. You have a great night.
I certainly will try.
See ya.
Take care. I hope you found Ian Bailey's journey just as interesting and exciting as I have. And from the open road to the endless miles of the Australian outback, we're going to be remembered that life does not have to follow a script. There is no 9 to 5. There is no, I have to be here by this time to work this job. Like, no, you can do anything you want to do. Just find a way. You want to do it? Find a way. Find a way to make it happen. That's what Ian's done, and he's an absolute amazing adventure. And if you want to follow more of Ian's epic journey, make sure to check out One Aussie's Adventure. The links are down below. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like and share the video. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue having wild stories like this of a heart that lived life freely. That's what Ian's story really is. Now, until next time, keep dreaming, keep exploring, and don't forget to get outside. Worst case scenario, a bear kills you. Short of that, you're doing great. See you next time.